say obia ni twia e na obia so nso ate bi se ma ni mienu ne wo se edikuna I stand to be corrected na yemfa enokure panka asem wa ha pachotie maami Akosua se wa ho oyoba wo na wa ya ade papa hwe video ni fita hyase kosi awiye se mi hu so obi bie na no adidi maami na temu a me se nipa no wongina yie na gina yie. Do you know why? Wo hwe de wa famwo a ono na enim ena dadulumba na enim na ni nyina achi wan pia bonten ameka bibi angu dadulumba ho fin sade nkrofo bi ka se ade na wote ase na wanka ebia ye wo na wote ase anka obeka ye wo nipa bi ho no masem si wo ne ntamu a na wo mpo na wudifo a owotema owowodo etimi gye se maame no na owotema na owowodo enti na wan pre ne ho se wo pia bonten abeka nsem bi due to nsem bi a etwam na kofa baaye no eno dadulumba eye dadulumba true or no ena maami Akosua se wa ni wodobroni enya encounter e wa abrabom eti maami no wa akonye se obetimi apia bonten aba bekasa wa ma me kasa echie ni papa wa ye any no matter differences ane o no dadulumba ntam no odo ne tina bia na owoma no esan se na wonim se ni image eye at stake enti won pese oba be ka bibi na se die nkrofo hu dadulumba se oya bofo no sebi ebi ono na sem bia obeka no na akwakofa wo ye nebi ana akwakofa wo tan bi dia ba adentia wono ne wo ma sana mimi susu se maame ne dwene ye enti se wo bi ya na dwe se wo be di maame Akosua se wa atem a na wa dwene saade we se hu sanse konfo bone a watena yarefo ho ma konfo papa beto no ye nyini mu maame no wa bre papa wutie ni nsem bia epiepia bonten ene said the homana montuo ni si call ye ni nsem bia epie father de number ho a na se ne wa bre pa ena mintimi so ma metan odobroni wuni ma de kodi entia enam dadulumba so ena odobroni ba sin ni mu de ekoso nyina no dadulumba anka obi wu a ye nka na kira sem enu nti na ahyase ne wo senka abusuafo ne mu a mo ka bi ewom a mo ban ni mutum nan si so na wotweda ne ma ne mienu nyina na kwotena ase mo call court ya mo twen se ne abasai de besisi enya bone senka call court but the call su nyina chi still say ma ne mienu and I stand to be corrected wo mo mienu na esa be tena se a odoba pa na mo de be tena enso mpa ho empanyimfo bi nto wo mo na yinsi ho na de wo pa na ade ne nti ase o na nya wo a wo be ye hweso ma me de wodi kan hwe no the friend odobroni on that room but na yi woni na wo poly yesinsia yesesei dadulumba de nimu asama wakato na dwenim ye kwa ye be wo ho ye ni nkrofo bi adi agro ye ni nkrofo bi eto anamon obi ho no ma oyewu nua oye wadanfo oni wuni agro biem okoba bi no oni obi kwa akodi nkoma na dream ni na komembo nim papa wa ye ni papa wo ye ono wonim ensu bia ne selfish interest inti okwa no akoka asam ya de afa ho edaye nyina ye ni mu otwen ye enti obi te wasam akwanya ofa so tene no enipa ne bebre nipa na ote asam ni free ni ho no se odo ne bro so a ne wagie nipa ne da wo dane ne so na wo a wote obi abi no waba benya ho tan I stand to be corrected se ne de ne friend odobroni no e wo tan bi mpo e de mama me Akosua se wa dadulumba na ye na nsu ni nyina nkamfu ano dadulumba no woni obiem ye mo bebre ye nya tan simply because enipa bi na wo ben wo ana enipa bi ogu so ben wo wakọ baby na okoduru ho no ne selfish interest inti enkomoboni e wadi afa ho no etu fiti koti a na ya sha ase edi watam wa afiefie mu adentia ya te ho asemboni bi enu ti na me de me ti obi ho asemboni na ma yem no mi ye nyansani mi ntia tesem ensowi ntia wo bi e ba sa akrapo na wutia tesem so bi tia wo bi oye innocent no me ba wo so tabi mba nko na ni mu nkoma a oni odobroni ni diye nansu de besiesie wie me sira ni dia kasa se Ghana ha ne de nipa dodo na no enya dia tem na wo dia me ba ye na nkama me share video ase ba ko mienu miensen ena nkama di maami Akosua se wa atama sabre nka ebusuafo ni bi kas ebi ni makasa da dada ajoyes nyansa pe di nyansa se ebi nipa dodo na ampe wo kakra ase yente me ba na me di eya odobroni na tempa na me di atama o anka ma nyo obi ni ma ba be kasa da enso nyansa we die ye te kra na ye twa nyansa we ma na nyansa ma mo wate mo me nyansa we ya me kan mo ma na nyansa ma mo adawroma magina fifi no mo ma na nyansa mu hia emfa ma mo na ewo bi na awie bi e na fa ne fa nyanso so a na no nche se ba bi fo me fa nkodi animbuase no adoso enya boni se obi a pray ne right nanso de akoso no mobetimi de year to year ama asomdua ba ne kofa ba ya no dadoluma o wona akofa we nyina ba wona akofa we nyina ba na sabi ono woni ho padua na anka ponkoto nti konfo nsem ene beka mumie hwe ne yie ma remfi Kofi kinata de nyum biaba na me se me ka ho asem nya asem ketoa adwom ne mu nsem wadaroma ko subscribe ko panyum ne etie kyese wotie nyum ne mu nsem a wosen begu na baba wa na ye friend Mavis Asante na ne kunu ye sofo no adwoma wono so de aba no aseda reloaded wadaroma ko ne ko petie me bo obi di ana se hu se mani abre a enipa mpuntuo na ye makono eye maniche ewo mu se me nhye de nyankrofo nya saa ma me de enso wade ti ase wo mu mani mu aseda me kan bi ne saa anko yi a na wo de ache me panifo se dwie pan e na etwi abrabo mu nkomo ye ho aduro maba bedu Ghana edie ene MC ne left and right bibia ni a mumie ni nkicha ho me da ase kumasi abonten so esewani nsa wo ka kire ebusuane ma akoso no wo de ahwade ne hwekosi awieye menya akọ e wa America se dwumadie bi koso me MC yi membra me MC program no na niema me expect ene sisi wo program na se metwofo ne panyi baako e na wo mu free nkran eta na chi ba kumasi abonten so se wo ya ayeforo enti ne nkrofo na di achie no no mo ye ma ne ye kama obi si na di ani mpacho eduru wo so a na apa wa yi ha na firi mu wo mo de wo mo pene no wo mo ye ma ne ye kama because eyade a wo mo eye ema program na se niema different rewe mu na we no mo pagya niema ye wo mo ho niema no eduru se me pagya obi hwade wa ha no mo ka se media go me pie program ase a ba bia de mi ruam bia me pagya brante no ema mu se niema me pagya no we krampo ye mo nketwa. This was lovely. Erade mo wa wo hwe me pagya no nti na ni mo nchi no mo ani je nwi opaye wa wo power we sika akwantu adwuma wa wo pa ya ne sa ye ho nyankopon fandom wo me ba go jesi na link ma me ko ye program yi erade show sa wo hwe me MC Noy magraheb eno kwamoma yenkane nkrofo bi sanu nyuma eyefe we Skype Construction Limited ensanu nyuma eba dansi a ifrahase kosi awieye wo de da o ma bibia be ye kama wadru ba bi hu se wo to aso fama o bibia be ye kama okone se obomidin na obri Yeboah or the discount no be ma left and right. Skype Construction say yentena sima obi mfensia na ne yankunu bi emu o enkane na obi simi disika be simi busuani so wadi mi hwamo media be simi madam for so wadi mi hwamo NSN ni hobi Skype Construction bema bibia be ye kama fa number no bisa question se wo se obi se nyanti ase ye wunhwehwe mu wo around ani wo mu nkohia wo be se obi gina wonema woni wo mu nkohia wo ti ase wie na woni Skype Construction Limited edi nkoma fa wo dan ne ho a ba bia waduru bia in fact percentage wise akrobeto mi adi sika ne bi wo wi a ne watwia de aka na so Skype Construction say obema dan sie ho nsem no aya kono yenti adade no ba nsam na kwakọ wie ba bi awie no me ba be go straight to the point say no de be sie awie hwe video ni fiti ahase ko sie awie ye enta me na nyuntu ni patenten kwa ho eya dwumtu ni Mavis Asante ni Kofi kinata ya ade bi a eno ho asem na me ka na we ya ba be bom judgment aba be to dwa say de akwakọ
of justice. One, the issue in the court was about the authentication of marriage.
Yeah.
Whether said there was an ordinance marriage, and if there was an ordinance marriage, then anybody cannot go and marry outside of the ordinance marriage. Then it becomes bigamy in the law. You can say tradition, but once there's an ordinance marriage, the traditional marriage is not recognized in law.
Yeah.
And you know, the issue in the court was to authenticate whether say Akosua was legally married. Now they brought marriage certificates from the German consulate. It was translated into English. It was sent to the School of Languages in Ghana, which is an expert field, to translate the document from German to English. Now, for the judge to say, sir, the document is not valid. You know, the judge is not an expert on the documentation.
Yeah.
For her to validate the authenticity of the documentation, an expert in the field had to be brought. The judge cannot make that decision. This is travesty of justice. It looks as if said the judge was already influenced. She was already predetermined to make a judgment on the case because the only person who be defending traditional marriage, you know, it was just hearsay. There was no documentation to back it. How do you use hearsay as evidence in the law of court? Anybody can say anything. Where is the proof? Where is the authentication? For you to say that both of them are couples, that is travesty of justice. You cannot trump ordinance marriage with a traditional marriage. If you want to validate the documentation, and according to lawyer Kusino, they had gone to the notaries to certify the certificate. It was translated in Ghana. It came from the German consulate. So, what right, based on what authority does the judge have? Because she's not an expert on documentation. She's not an expert on documentation. She only has to listen to arguments, look at precedents. If there is any previous judgment from a higher court that validates that judgment, she didn't look at all those things. She just based it on her own assumptions. And if they appeal in a higher court, because Ghana legal system, we practice common law system, just like the United Kingdom. And it is based on precedents. Decisions that are made from the higher court are binding on lower courts. And that decision that we're making, fine. If they appeal in the higher court to prove say the documentation were valid, the case will be recalled because her judgment is from a lower court, and the higher court can repeal the judgment she made.
You about law and I mean this now appeal. Would they be allowed to say they can tender in a new evidence video
under special circumstances, if the legal team can convince the panel say a new evidence is come up and it is conventional, it will be accepted. It is not the norm, but under special circumstances, you can provide new evidence to the appellate court, which is done. If the legal team finds new evidence to buttress their case, at the time of hearing, those documents were not available, and now they have them, and the panel is convinced that they can tender in those documents.
Yeah, because my many judgment, what true say there were no videos. But my say I've seen videos now, but I don't know if almost they call.
Where were videos of the traditional marriage? Where were the videos of the traditional marriage?
There were not.
Where were
none?
So how it was somebody's word say only pakono krano or wari wofio. Some hearsay, no documentation to prove it. How is hearsay admissible in the law of court? Anybody can say anything in court. So how can just hearsay become admissible in the court? The judge already had her position. It is not based on legal facts, because what precedent is she using? Because the common law system is built on precedent. Judgments that are made by previous judges in higher court, because decisions in lower courts are not binding on higher courts. However, decisions in higher courts are binding on lower courts, and the lower court must follow precedents that have taken place before. So you look at previous legal cases and the decisions that were made and the reasons that were given in the judgment to inform you as to how you make a decision in the current case. What are the legal precedents that were followed? This is miscarriage of justice. And I think that the legal team should appeal and submit all those documents which they already tendered, and the judge was saying that it is not enough. Under what circumstances is she in the position to determine which document is authentic? When the letter was coming from the German consulate, whoever wrote that letter had their name on it. If you wanted to verify, German consulate is not in Mass, it's in Accra. You could verify, you could subpoena them to come to court and then defend the document. Even Ghana marriage certificate.
Subpoena no, and judge lawyer no na.
The defense, Odobroni legal team, who has to do that to validate, say, if you disagree with data, the burden of proof lies on you. So you have to prove, say, and you're authentic.
Oh, okay. And
Akosua say one lawyer doesn't have to prove that. She has submitted a document.
Now, and that's so allow say almost say
I'm gonna make actually say the judge
What a
or no
point
the
to them.
judgment, or a preconceived judgment, because some of the document ever court. Now let me say document in a authentic. Unji there, una will say a problem with the document. So now you have to make me look bad by proving semi document in the end
And your
correct.
papa.
It is not the
I get it.
burden of proof is not on me. The burden of proof is on you. Because see document in a genuine, then you have to prove it. Let me see document in a genuine. So you have to prove to the court, say, document I'm the buy a fake. The burden of proof is on you, it's not on me.
Because what true we say on the expert and what did they maintenance here, judge?
On the expert, why who expert, you bring the expert to the court and we cross-examine the expert.
Exactly.
Who to make judges on the expert? Who was the expert? Where is he? What did the expert say? Expert is a German marriage certificate, was not authentic. The letter no much to say Akosua se wani lumba e wari here. There was a marriage certificate number on it, which is verifiable. It was wronger. You can now say based on your findings, the documentation does not exist. You didn't do all that. How can you say only expert to Kasabe, expert in train, or a German Bruniana or a wine? Well, what is the base? Which database did you use? And where it's for a layman, right, you can tell say something is fishy somewhere.
Okay.
Because if you are following the legal system there, this judge has no expertise in determining authentic documents. He's not an expert in that. He's not an expert in that. That is where there is still room for them. There's still room for them to appeal the case, because this is a lower court. This is a lower court. Their decisions are not binding on any higher court. They should take it harder. If you come at the appellate court, not they can go to the Supreme Court. You go to the highest court, and they should think about the consequences. The more it drags, as long as Chico court, it is delaying everything. And whatever they want to achieve, it will take a long legal battle. But the judge, if they find out, says Ghana na yɛde nneɛma di agorɔ. In a serious country, if they find out that the judge made these decisions on a falsified grounds, she can even be disbarred. Because a travesty of justice, you are just taking the law into your own hands, and you lose your judiciary immunity, and something can happen to you. But we take everything for granted, and then we trample on the justice system. They have to appeal, because she's not in the position to decide which document is not authentic. She's not an expert. She's not an expert.